Well, hello, everyone. Hope you're all having a great experience here at this year's ASTQ Summit. I'm Dave Rubenstein, Editor-in-Chief of SD Times. I've been covering the software development industry for about 23 years. And just when I think I've seen it all, new technologies and practices just keep coming down the pike. So before we get into the panel, I'll let my fellow panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get into it. So Manish, let's hear from you first.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Manish Panchal. I'm excited to be part of this ASTQ Summit this year. I have over 20 years of experience into software industry, mainly focusing on automated testing. I'm currently part of Bank of America, where I'm leading automation team for one of the vertical, taking care of ensuring that the team has all the support they need to achieve the automation. I'm primarily focusing on the architectural type of the automation, where ensuring that if there is any team having difficulties, they reach out to us. I have strong experience into working with different tools, writing various framework, recruiting, training teams, and ensuring to develop the strategy that allow organizations to automate their processes. So I'm excited to be part of this summit today.
Excellent. Stuart?
Hey, David, thanks. And yeah, thanks for having me participate in this summit. Also very excited to be a part of it. I'm a director of API and performance testing at CIBC, a bank in Canada. I work with a specific line of business within the bank that is responsible for testing and delivering CIBC's online banking and mobile banking assets. Over 25 years in software industry, spanning development and QA practices. But yeah, my current role, leading a technical team that delivers our quality on our API assets.
Okay, and Wilhelm.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wilhelm Hawker. I am the Director of Solution Engineering focused on our functional products. I joined Parasoft 15 years ago and have a strong focus around API testing, service virtualization, helping our customers work on their automated testing and kind of continuous testing initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, so let me start with this, and I'll throw this out to start with Stuart, but certainly we'd like Manish and Wilhelm to please to jump in with your thoughts. So we all know about the importance of APIs because modern applications are more cobbled together than pure code. So obviously the APIs are critical, and testing those APIs are critical. So Stuart, so let me ask you, so to catch these problems earlier in the life cycle, all these organizations talk about, well, we're just going to shift left and then we'll, be able to catch things earlier. So how do organizations actually get started with doing that, and how can they do it effectively?
Yeah, so, people have been talking about shifting left for quite a while, and it's in my experience in our organization, it's sort of taken a little while to get started. Where we've started is to really have our QA team move closer to the development team, both co-location where we can, but really in partnering and being with the development team right from the very start during the design phase. One of the analogies I use is that what we do, we deliver food for a restaurant, right? Historically, perhaps QA has been sitting in the dining room and development has been in the kitchen. And what you see to sort of extend the analogy is development was preparing the meals and taking them out to the dining room where the QA team would assess. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to get right in the kitchen with the development team. Start right at the very start, at the design sessions, looking at the interface agreements, working through the swaggers, trying to call out problems that may arise in the future and anything that may impede testing as we proceed through the project lifecycle.
Mm-hmm. Great. Wilhelm, care to add anything to that?
Yeah, actually, that's very interesting. I see that as a common thread across many of our customers. And what I find particularly interesting about the test role coming closer to development is how you can adopt technologies to make everyone's life easier when they're tackling a complex problem like integrating dozens of microservices together that need to all work together in context of a system. So, when you're embedded in the design phase of the API, development hasn't even started cooking yet, so to speak. We're just looking at the recipe. That's an opportunity to develop a virtual service, for example, right? And you can socialize that virtual service with the client applications that intend to build on top of the API, right? And now you have a collaboration mechanism, a lot like how designers use, what's it called? Where they present a scaffold of the UI that doesn't really work, but it's a wireframe, right? A wireframe
yep.
where they can kind of look and see, get feedback. And so there's a lot of workflows like this where you bring technology and teams closer together to improve the process. And so that's definitely something I've been seeing as a trend.
Mm-hmm. Manish, how about you?
Yeah, I would say shift left is one of the necessity in today's agile environment. If we look at the projects, 80% of the automation project, I would say 70 to 80, you'll find it as failures. They spend unlimited amount of dollars and hours in automating something, and that happens because they start too late in the cycle, where everything is developed and now they want testing team to go ahead and automate all the test cases where regression testing is already completed. And now, even after they automate, because of the pressure they have to deliver on time, they sometimes not able to deliver the quality work. So if entire testing process is shifting left, where we start as soon as they talk about the designing phase, the requirement or the stories where we become part of that, that's where testers feel like involved, and that's where they can introduce the better strategies. And shifting left is where they can go with TDD based, where like developer will focus on developing the test. They will design the feature. Once it is working, it will start passing. And that's where I think testing team are feeling kind of left behind. And we also have teams now starting with behavior driven development pattern. So these are the strategies where teams can adopt to move to shift left. And with BDD, team can also come up with their automation framework, where API-based, database, UI-centric, a lot of things are developed part of features using the Gherkin language. So these are the strategies when adopted. I think shift left will become successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, Manish, you make a very good point there about the loss of value once, if automation is not built in right from the start, right? Again, part of shifting left is to get that testing done earlier rather than very late in the cycle. Like you said, trying to bolt on automation after the functional QA is, after the product is delivered and a lot of the QA is done, you've lost a lot of opportunity to get return on your investment, right? You're spending thousands of dollars on automation, but you haven't utilized it all the way through the cycle, or maximizing the utilization of your automation throughout the entire life cycle of the project.
Exactly, and as we know that if there is a defect found in production late in the cycle, sometimes it can cost the entire budget of the project to fix the defect. And that might end up failure of the entire project. So it's very important that everyone work together right from day one.
Yep. Yeah, and that's kind of the whole mantra of shifting left, right? Is finding those defects in a cheaper cycle, right? A cheaper testing cycle. We are starting to use Parasoft's penetration testing tool as part of our API test suite. Again, that the whole idea around that is to find critical security defects so development can address them during their delivery rather than finding them. To Manish's point, maybe you don't, without that capability, maybe you don't find that security defect until you do like an old-fashioned penetration test, on the application under test. So again, shifting left, uncovering defects earlier, and being able to deliver the fixes sooner and in a cheaper cycle.
Mm-hmm. Good. So when you talk about shifting left, everything wants to shift left. You have testing shifting left, security shifting left. Developers are kind of feeling overwhelmed. So is it solely the developer responsibility to ensure that the testing is happening early, or are organizations putting together like these squads of people that are developers, testers, security people to kind of ensure that everything is moving swiftly through the pipeline, or what's the best approach there?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things there, right? Like one of the philosophies that we're taking on board in our team, and I don't just mean with our QA team, but our project management partners, our development partners, our business analyst partners, is that quality is a responsibility of the whole team, not just the quality assurance team or the quality engineers. I guess conversely to that, if like you said, David, if everyone's shifting left and now we're all in development's kitchen earlier, how do we help them to basically to assist in their delivery, right? Because they're going to be pressured. They don't have those 3-4 weeks of quiet time where it's just them heads down. They're participating in more face-to-face conversations with different teams earlier in the process. So, from a QA perspective, I'm not sure I have the answer to your question, David, like, because I can see why development would suddenly feel like, hey, everyone's looking for something for me right now, and all we want to do is get our heads down and write code, right? So, yeah, there does need to be sort of a support structure around that, right? And how does it not just all collapse onto development?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back on what you were saying, Stuart, about adopting penetration tests, reusing what you have with your API tests that you've automated already. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a common question we get, David, right? When we're working with organizations and we're talking about shift left, a lot of times we hear, development and QA, we're already overwhelmed with enough tasks, and now you're asking us to do more tasks. And so besides sort of organizing the teams in the right way in the process, tools can play a role in alleviating that burden as well. So, if you have 3 knives that do 3 different things, right, and you have to cut with them and keep switching between those knives, maybe there's an all-purpose knife that does all the cutting that you need. So everyone's trained on how to use that one tool, right? You get efficiencies by sort of collaborating with the same set of tools. And so that's something that our customers have been benefiting from, right? It's not just functionally testing their APIs, but security and performance concerns, reusing what they have to try to gain efficiencies, because I do think it's really relevant, right? If everyone shifts left and everyone is in the kitchen, now you have too many cooks in the kitchen. So what are ways we can do to sort of get what we want done with shift left, but do it in a way where it doesn't overwhelm the teams as well?
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
I would highlight that it's everyone's responsibility. So if we have processes which are too development centric, then the other members within the team will feel like they are not often valued, like especially the testing team, where they feel like we are not being recognized properly. And it is also a risk where if developers keep getting all the document, and if they are not efficient enough or proactive enough to put those documents into right place, here we'll have no idea what's happening with the development cycle. So this is where the practices like Agile, DevOps, where development, operations, all the members of the team work together. They have a regular meetings on a sprint cycle, which is often 2-week cycle, and everyone delivers the work they are doing on day-to-day basis. So these are the practices which are becoming popular because of that reason. So in these practices, everyone feels like they're part of team and they will all contribute their piece successfully.
Yep. Okay. So one of the things that I'm curious about is what specifically can automation help with in terms of functional API testing, and where does the role of automation come in?
Yeah, I mean, so I can speak sort of how we use it at CIBC. So we, well, within my specific team at CIBC, so we have a whole bunch of API test suites. Obviously that our team can sit at a PC and open up Parasoft and a SOA test and click. But we've been using the command line interface to build package execution into our pipeline to assist in a number of ways. So from a CI perspective, we have a regression set that we run in an environment that allows us to execute parallel packages at once. As kind of a quality measure, but we also provide some API test packages to our deployment teams to be able to use those as part of an automated shakedown. So, built right into the pipeline. The automation is there to, obviously the development team has their integration tests, within their builds. Then, obviously we are then deploying packages from Artifactory into our environments. Once we've done those deployments and we've brought up our applications, how do we then, get a good measure that the environment is ready for QA to start testing it in anger? So that's one of the ways we've built in that automation. We don't run our entire test suite against an environment once we build and deploy it, but we have a subset, and that replaces what was previously a kind of a manual shakedown or quote unquote smoke test. And that allows you to build sort of another automated gate in your pipeline that gives you another green signal to say, yeah, okay, all of our integration tests pass, great. The compile didn't fail, great. Now we've deployed it, great. The application server is running, great. But now we've run a package of tests that says that we can do XYZ tests within our environment and say, yeah, this environment is good for full testing. So
Awesome.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Manish.
Just wanted to highlight one point on what Stuart said. In today's fast-paced environment where most organizations are moving towards agile, we can't think of testing without automation. So imagine you have all the service-oriented architecture, the API is the main focus, but today there is not possibility that somebody can do manual testing of thousands of APIs. And once you do it, you want to do it again, now you need another tester. So if you automate once, yes, there is a upfront cost, but then the reusability in future, you can run it into multiple operating systems, multiple environments. You can distribute to multiple machines to reduce the runtime. So this is all possible only with automation.
Yep.
With manual, it's an effort lost. Plus, it's too much dependency on manual testers because they are often not so good with documentation. So automation can also serve as a guideline for future teams to understand how functionality works, what are the assertions or expected results documented. And now most of the tools have such feature to generate the documentation from the automated scripts, or the automated results can be considered as a documentation for future testing. So without automation, it's impossible to imagine testing in today's world.
Yeah, and no one's going to wait around 5 days for you, Manish, to finish your testing, right? So they want the testing done now, and let's get it into production. So.
So how does automating these tests kind of help balance out the old dilemma of speed versus quality. We want to get out the door fast, but we want to make sure that the application is solid. So can automation help in regards to kind of leveling that off a little bit to help speed up delivery while still maintaining quality?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it helps you to maintain that velocity, right? It's kind of a P times Q thing, right? So, as what we deliver becomes more, has more features, it does more for our clients. It has more things to test, right? But we have the same or less time to test it. So, like you said, right? If you don't have automation there, and you don't maintain, build, and deliver the automation, at some point you're going to have to start making decisions about where to skip. What you have to implement, sort of more of a risk-based approach, and have a human or groups of people make decisions about what we're going to take a chance with, right? But if you have a full automation suite, to Manisha's point, you've made that investment up front, you've committed as an organization to support that strategy, then you don't have to make some of those risk-based decisions because you have you have a comprehensive automation package in place. So.
Good.
Some thoughts I have listening to this is there's the expanding role of API testing that I've seen when it comes to risk. Like 20 years ago, we were all talking about web services and SOAP, and then cloud containerization. A lot of changes have happened. And what I've been seeing is a greater focus on being able to, like you guys are saying, right, manage the risk of what do we test or not test, or how do we adapt our testing strategy to the moving landscape of the software architectures we're building, and placing a greater emphasis on how to get that done. So, for example, if you write a Selenium test and you're using Selenium to drive the bulk of your functional testing, these days we see that web applications are built on top of APIs, right? And the browser is calling these front-end APIs, and not every API is built the same, right? A core service that facilitates integration with backend systems may have more governance and testing versus a front-end API that's serving the web app. And so we see more interest from our customers on, we're testing our core services today, right? We're testing the Swaggers and all of that. And now we want to start bringing that level of maturity in testing to those front-end APIs and finding efficient ways to test those APIs, because if you're coming down from the user's perspective, right, these are user journeys, right, long scenarios through the browser, and that can represent dozens, hundreds of API calls that get made, right? So how can we test those sequences of calls efficiently is one thing. The other thing that I found interesting from the discussion is related to risk, right? And managing risk from the perspective of the metrics that you're able to gather. And I think that's another interesting aspect, that it's not just pass fail, right? It's what other information can we collect while we're testing that can inform the development team and quality team. Are we pushing too fast, right? There's always a focus on, get the features built, get the product out the door. But there needs to be a counterbalance to that weight that says, are we taking on too much risk, too much unknowns, not testing what needs, or finding gaps in our testing to say, maybe in this sprint, we slow down feature development a little bit so we can catch up on quality.
Coverage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are the metrics you're looking at in those kind of scenarios? What kind of metrics?
One of the things we're trying to do, and again, it's to tackle the conversation about risk, and also to sort of report on the multiple layers of testing that we have. Wilhelm talks about API testing, which is at one level, and then he's also talking about UI testing, right? And then even underneath that, you have the integration tests that development has built into their pipeline themselves. One of the things we're trying to discover, David, and working with Parasoft is what is the consolidated test coverage that we have from all of those different streams of testing. Historically, and when I say historically, I mean recent history. We've had maybe we get a code coverage report that gets spit out of a build process, right? And maybe they're using a static code analysis in there, like SonarQube, Jacoco, something like that. Then we've built on top of that is our API test, and we have coverage as well. And then on top of that, we have the UI team that's using Selenium or some kind of scriptless UI framework to test through the UI itself. What we didn't have is what that picture looks like holistically, right? And be able to look at where we have coverage that's missed, and also interestingly enough, where we might have overlapping coverage that might be unnecessary. Because the team that builds our UI automation is different from the team that I have that does our API testing delivery, right? So that's one of the things. One of the metrics that we're looking at is that consolidated code coverage, Dave, with the view actually to both broaden our API test coverage, because we want to get to a position where we can deliver our APIs to production without relying on our UI testing, but also to look at, are we able to make some risk decisions if we really are pushed to not test a specific portion in the UI because we have that coverage underneath, or potentially vice versa, right? To say, okay, this is a particularly difficult thing to test from an API perspective. Wilhelm talks about journeys or scenarios. Do we have that covered elsewhere within the team?
Excellent. So, Manish, let me ask you, if you were going to...
One point I want... Sorry,
okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one point to the discussion on that. Like, oftentimes we'll notice that dev team complain that because of testing team, we are slow into cycle and they take too much time into testing. And for these teams, when you find the metric, how their test coverage and test functionality is aligned, you'll find in the pyramid, they are focusing too much into UI testing. And on the top, you will find very little unit testing. And this is where if they flip the view, and you'll find all the successful teams, you'll find that they are focusing very well balanced into unit testing. Then they have an API and integration testing. And the UI, they mainly focus to do end-to-end testing. So when they flip the view and then they understand that why some teams are successful and some not, they will find that they have to introduce API and unit testing heavily into their test strategy.
Excellent. All right. So I see we're pretty close to winding down time here. So Wilhelm, let me start with you and we'll go around. If there's one key takeaway that our attendees should be really conscious of when they're looking to implement automated testing and some of the best practices, what's like a key takeaway from the discussion that you would think people ought to take with them?
So I think it's, as we've been discussing, it's important to plan ahead and collaborate, right? The discussion around shift left and getting the teams to work together in the design phase is critical. For teams that are new to API testing, or maybe they're only familiar with testing through the user interface, it can be kind of daunting or intimidating, right? Because now you're dealing with something that doesn't have a UI and you're looking at raw data in like JSON format, let's say. So, there are a lot of tools and resources out there, Parasoft being amongst them, that can really help teams start building a strategy that can give them the optimizations and efficiencies they're looking for. And just start taking the first steps. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you.
Great. Stuart, what would you say as a key takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, to build on top of what Wilhelm said, it's a collaborative process. Working closely with the development team early on. You know, it's not something that's innately natural, I guess. You know, there's been kind of silos there, but you know, we're sort of breaking that down, and getting into the process earlier has actually helped us look at opportunities too for virtualization, which Wilhelm touched on, right? Again, looking at you know, being able to start early, build virtual responders, virtual assets that we can use to certify the Swagger and the IA. It has allowed us actually in some cases to begin testing our application before some of our backend partners and services have even been ready. So that's kind of been something that goes hand in hand with shifting left, and it certainly you know, would not be possible to sort of have a virtualization strategy in place if we were waiting for development to finish, right? So that's the thing I think is key to start working closer together with your development partners.
That would certainly be a best practice. So I guess that would be a good place for organizations to start getting into that. It's a good point.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
then just one other thing that Wilhelm mentioned, you know, he did say it could be daunting, right, when people start, and I do remember, you know, one of the things with Agile is, you know, you know, there's a concept of, you know, doing your demo to the business, and I remember when we first started doing this, we kind of made one mistake where we started to demo what we were doing as an API testing team to the business, and really again, they're looking at requests and response in JSON format, you know, perhaps at a SOA test, and there wasn't a lot of value in that, right? Because, you know, the business is really wanting to look at the bells and whistles and the UI and how the user experience looks. So you know, I would be careful, you know, applying, you know, that kind of agile / let's, you know, have iterative demos to the business at the API level, and leave that for the UI folks. So
Unless the API is your product, of course.
and unless that's your only product, and you have a very technical business that you know, wants to be right there. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Manish.
Yeah, so I would say one of the key takeaway for the team should be that instead of moving towards quality assurance, move towards quality engineering in today's world, where have everybody learn automation, learn programming, because if you want to automate, if you want to introduce automation to your team, you need a developer mindset. Testing comes with a different set of skills, different set of mindset. So having blend of both will ensure the project success. It will find the defect, at the same time, it will also have a constructive mindset to do that development effort. So I would say everyone should get trained into programming and also automation.
Excellent.
Yep. Great point, Manish.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Great discussion. I think a good way to get today, continue rolling at the summit here. Certainly want to thank Parasoft for having us and hosting us and putting on this fine event. And so I guess that's it from here. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.